Be mindful of who you network with because that person may be doing more damage than good for you. I didn't get the position. I really do want to work here. I've heard nothing but great things about your organization, and I want to be a part of it. And I know that I can be an asset to this company.
I think unlimited PTO is a slippery slope and it's a red flag.
So for unlimited PTO, and employees like to hear, oh, we have unlimited PTO. The thing about any PTO, unlimited or limited, is that it has to be.
Welcome to the Bottom Line Upfront with Terry Thompson, the show where we get to the bottom line up front of the most important issues facing life and business. And now, here's your host for this episode, Terry Thompson. As an employer, when you are interviewing a candidate and the person is displaying red flags, believe those red flags. As a potential employee, if you are being interviewed and you see red flags, believe those red flags. Today's episode is all about those red flags that employers and employees often face and how to deal with them. You know, preparing for an interview can be stressful, and it is. It can be absolutely overwhelming. You never really know what's going to be asked of you, and you often ask yourself, should I just answer the question simply, or should I dive deep into it and over-answer everything with all kinds of technical information and stuff all over the place? Or do I share the personal side of me, or should I maintain my professionalism? You may also be asking yourself why certain questions are asked. Like, why is this person asking this question? And how do I answer it? How do I answer those tough questions that I either don't have an answer for? I have a very strong opinion about those things, and I just want to spill my guts on all that. Or even worse, you have an answer, but you're stumbling all over the place with things that are so random that they don't even make sense, making you look like you have no clue what you're talking about. Wow, that's embarrassing. But the big question, this is the big question. What are the red flags in question that both sides must look out for? Today, we have a very special guest who's going to help us understand what to look out for and so much more. Welcome to the show, Belinda Harris. How you doing, Belinda?
I'm good, Terry. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm very excited.
You are absolutely welcome, man. I know we've known each other for a couple of years now, and I love your energy. I love your story. You know, your products, your service, your business is absolutely amazing. And I know we've connected a couple of times in the past. I've even been in the hot seat. You
Right?
have this great show called The Hot Seat. Like, oh my goodness, you reached out to me and was like, Terry, I want you to be on the hot seat. Come into the hot seat. Let me ask you some questions. Here's the show. Here's the script. Here's the answers. Here's everything. I get in the hot seat and oh my God, you flipped the script on me. Nothing was asked that I was ready for, I was prepared for. I was caught completely off guard. And I was like, oh my God, you just flipped the script on me.
You did great.
Thank you so much. You know, and interviews can kind of feel like that. Like you get in the hot seat, you're trying to interview for a job. It's one of those things like, man, you know, just like I said right there within the intro, like, do you get personal? Do you get professional? Do you share? Do you not share? What do you say? What do you don't say? There can be this imbalance of things that really could probably throw up red flags in and of itself if you don't know how to approach that. Let's talk about those red flags. What are red flags?
Red flags are things that stand out, things that usually for negativity that you're like, oh, you see one, you think maybe that's not it. Then you see another one. So a red flag is something that's waving and it's saying, no, this is not a good sign. This is not a good, you don't want to go this way. So that's what a red flag is as it relates to interviewing. It's like, no, this is not a company that I want to work for, or this is not an employee that I want to hire. So that's what red flags as it relates to interviewing.
I love that. You know, and you and I had a previous discussion, and you are a subject matter expert. I mean, you're an absolutely phenomenal person. And when I reached out to you and asked you about a red flag that I was personally experiencing, I was like, ooh, who am I going to go ask? Who am I going to talk to? And I was like, you know what, Belinda, you're the expert when it comes to HR. And I love that. I love that you're a valuable resource for me. And I know you'll be a valuable resource for anybody that's out there that needs HR related questions. Definitely make sure you get connected with Belinda. But I reached out to you with a red flag. I was like, you know what? This sounds interesting, but it sounds like a red flag, but it sounds like, oh my goodness, these people are using the platform the wrong way. And
Right.
I remember, like, I put my resume out there. I'm looking for jobs. I'm applying for jobs. I'm doing different things. And next thing you know, I get a phone call about, and a text message and a voice message and all email and all the above about, hey, I want to talk to you about your resume. I'm so and so, and I represent so and so. And as I did my analysis, because as an employee, a potential candidate or employer or interviewee, I have to do analysis as well too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And when I did that, I saw red flags that just basically said, you know what? This is not an employer. This is an investment opportunity. And I was just shattered. I was like, man, is that a misuse of platform? That's the question I want to ask because I feel
It
that it's
is.
a misuse of platform. It's a misuse of, reaching out to people. It's getting people's hopes up, all the above. When I share that story with you, what are your thoughts in mind?
So, I mean, it's just like any other platform that has clickbait.
Mm,
They get you to put your resume or put your information in there, and you're thinking it's for one thing, and really they have other alternatives. So no, and then I don't want to name the platform, but no, that is not the intent of that platform. That platform is to connect employers and employees. But just like every other platform and industry, there are people on there who don't have those intentions. And so it is things like that that you have to just be leery. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. One, an employer is not going to email, call, text, harass. They'll reach back out to you. They may reach out via email. They may reach out with a phone call and or voicemail. But then that's it. They're on to the next potential candidate. So when someone's just keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, as great as you are, Terry, and we know that you're very, very great, this person has other intentions. And that's what, we talked about back then.
that's a great point because this person still keeps calling me back.
Mm-hmm.
They,
That's
they
right.
keep I'm like, you know what? I'm not a lead. And
Right.
that's exactly what this person looks at me at is a lead,
Absolutely.
not a potential employee, but a lead. There's
Right.
a difference between being a lead and being a potential candidate.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
how do you approach that? Because, I think that the average person might get excited, like, ooh, man, I got a job, but yet they don't realize that they're a lead.
So what I always tell people when you're going out for a job, so because let me just a little bit, I'm an HR professional, so that is my background. And my primary business was to help people with interviews, help people with their resumes, etc. And I did that for a couple of years, and I thought, let me switch sides and help small businesses because they are the ones employing these people. So now, primarily, my focus is on small business. But what I tell people then, what I tell people now is, do not fall in love with the job.
Mm.
So when you see a job ad and you're like, this is perfect for me, you send in, whatever they ask for, resume, cover letter, application, whatever they ask for, you send it in. You can follow back up, but then you're still looking for other jobs. So it's the same thing. If you see a job you're interested in, you follow up, but you don't stay there. You don't get stuck there. Interviewing for me or sending your resume for me is like fishing, right? So when you fish, you can fish with different fish bait, bread. That's what I like because I don't really want to really catch it. Bread, worms, crickets, other fish. There's a lot of fish bait, right? You can go to any fish store and they got it. And so that's what your resume is. You're putting different baits on there to see what you reel back in. So when you're sending your resume out, you're trying different baits, you're trying different ways, you're tweaking your resume every time you're sending it out. When an employer reaches back out to you, they'll be like, okay, this seems like a nice person. They'll email or they'll call or they'll leave a message once because they still have 20, 30, 15 more resumes to go through. So they'll reach out to you, give you a reasonable amount of time to call back. If you don't call back in a reasonable amount of time, they're on to the next couple of candidates.
I love the fish bait analogy. You just literally reminded me of when I was younger, when I was about 13 years old. I used to go fishing all the time because if I didn't catch any fish, we didn't eat that
Right.
night. I mean, I've been in that line, standing in line waiting for that bag of government cheese and powdered milk and all that stuff years ago. Like you literally just made me have a flashback of that. But I used to go fishing in this little creek and I would I would catch fish with some of the dumbest things, like a piece of plastic on a hook. It's just crazy amounts of stuff. Bread, like I love bread. I don't know if bread would stay on the hook, but anyway, it's one of those things that I used to put different things on the hook just to catch fish so I could eat that night. Like I was trying to hold that all in. I was staying composed, but man, Belinda, thank you for that flashback, by the way. Oh my goodness. But you're onto something with that though, because that's exactly what it is. You know, being in the cybersecurity world as well too, you know, phishing is one of those things like people will fish and what they'll try to do is that they will social engineer you into taking an action, whatever that action may be. Click on this, click on that link, click submit your resume for this. And next thing you know, what they're doing is they're gathering information from you. And you could be social engineered and hacked at the same time. So that's one of the things that as a cybersecurity expert, I would caution against
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't know that it's a legitimate company, is it a legitimate offer? Is it a legitimate business actually genuinely looking for employees?
Right.
Here's another red flag. And I want to throw this one out here because I think that I may have had this actually happen to me a couple of times because I've been on interviews. I've made it all the way to the interview to share who I am and what I do, my valuable knowledge, my valuable skills, my valuable experience. And I got to the interview and just totally crushed it. I'm talking about I answered every question. I gave them some of the big high value technical things and this, that, and the other. And it leads me down the path of the red flag of companies looking for knowledge, skills, and information because they lack the knowledge, skills, and information. So they're reaching out to authorities and subject matter experts so that they could help build and grow and scale their business while leaving you cold with no job. That is a red flag. What are your
That is
thoughts?
a red flag. That is a red flag. I would think that in the interview, it's hard to know people's intention. You go in with hoping they have the right intention. And if you've interviewed several different for a company, so you interview for a company and you pass the phone interview, and if they had an assessment, you pass that, and then you pass the HR interview, and then you pass the manager interview, and you make it to the top level. It should really only be, if you make it to the top level, it should only be one or two people interviewing because you've beat all the other ones. I'm disappointed to hear that you made it all the way to the top level just for them to take all the information and to build their own business. So that is a red flag, and that's very disappointing to hear because not only was that a entirely waste of your time, but they're just using people for their knowledge, which is not, again, not the intent of not it should not be the intent of any business. They could have contracted with you and said, hey, we're lacking on this, can you provide this information, rather than use an interview or the farce of an interview to have you come in and spit out all this technical stuff that they don't even know what you're talking about anyway. um so that, I'm disappointed to hear that. The thing about interviewing, and that goes for the person interviewing you and the person being interviewed, is to read the room. Because you could be, so if I'm interviewing you, Terry, if I'm interviewing you as HR, I don't know all the technical terms. So if you're spitting out a whole bunch of technical terms, you're talking over my head. I'm trying to get the basics. Are you going to show up on time? So you want to read who you're talking to, because you could be talking over my head. I can tell that you're intelligent in the IT world. You throw out a little bit of acronyms, but if all you're spitting is acronyms or that terminology, and that's not, I'm HR. I know a little bit, some of those I've heard before, but it's like, I have no idea what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to read the room. So if you're interviewing with the HR person, you want to see, how much technical do they know? You can ask questions. Do you know what this means? Or would you like me to, clarify or anything like that? So, but if you're on a high level person, if one technical person is talking to another technical person, by all means, use all your fancy terminology.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point right there. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't take advantage of, and that's asking questions. Because I remember doing an interview one time, like the guy genuinely asked me, he goes, so do you have any questions? I was like, no, we're good. He goes, are you sure? Like, what do you mean, dude? Like, what do you mean? Am I sure? No, I'm sure I don't have any questions, but it had me kind of questioning, like, dang, man, do I have any questions? How do you approach that? Well, like when somebody says, do you have any questions? Are there important questions you should ask? Are there questions you should stay away from? What's the importance behind asking potential employers questions?
So I always ask that, and I always trained, yes, I have a question. When do you plan to make a decision?
Mm, that's a good one.
Because if it's, let's go back to 2023, people, let's pretend we're going back. It's October, and I'm interviewing Terry in October. I don't plan to hire till February. Terry thinks I'm hiring in October. If he doesn't ask me that, or if I don't volunteer that information, months go by, Terry hasn't heard from me. So I always tell people, when do you plan to make a decision? Because that one tells you when you can follow up. So if I say today's Monday as we're recording, when do you plan to make a decision? I plan to make a decision by Friday. On Friday, if I don't hear from you, then in me, that triggers me to follow back up on Monday to say, hey, I interviewed for this position. I asked you when you plan to make a decision. You said on Friday. I just want to know if the position was filled. Now, some people may think, well, if they wanted you, they would have called you on Friday, which is true. But also true is that on Friday in HR, anything can happen. And I didn't have time to call Terry and offer him the position. And so now it won't be till next week sometime. So it's appropriate to follow up to say, hey, I interviewed. I'm still very interested in the position because I could have been out sick Tuesday, Wednesday. I mean, you don't know. So I tell people, don't assume that you didn't get it because they didn't call you on the day they said. Follow up because that shows that you're still interested in the position. And they could say, it's happened to me. They call me on Monday and be like, I thought you were going to call on Friday. And I'd be like, thank you for calling. The bottom fell out Friday. I was about to call you and offer you the position because it shows that you're still interested. So those are the things. I hope I answered the question.
100%. And I can resonate with every bit of that because I remember that's how I actually got a job one time because I followed up.
Right.
It's one of those things to where I had about 50 or 60 resumes just floating around out there in the wind. I had a bunch of no's, a bunch of like, we'll contact you and, whatever the case may be. And the job that I ultimately ended up getting was when I followed up. Like I actually went straight in, walked up into the building, went face to face.
I remember you telling me that.
and it was one of those things I was like, look, who's in charge? I want to talk to this guy right here, right now. Let's go. And I did. I busted up in there. And, of course, I wasn't like demanding or nothing like that. Like I genuinely just wanted to show face. I wanted to show who I was and I wanted to kind of have a conversation. And it was one of those things to where I didn't meet all the requirements, but I understood having that conversation. It showed a little bit of, one, I'm available. I'm interested. I'm willing to prove to you that I'm going to do whatever it takes to get here. I think that whenever you take matters into your own hand, I think there's a degree of caution you should take, but there's also a degree of action that you must take in order to show them who you really are too, as a person, as a potential teammate, as a potential employer. What are your thoughts on that? Because you know the story, you're familiar with the story, and I ended up getting that job. It was one of those. It was amazing moments. Like, oh, you still want the job? You're still interested? Yeah, dude, I'm still interested. Let's make it happen. What are your thoughts on that?
It shows that you have initiative and that you think outside the box. Because some people would just call, or some people would just send an email, or some people let it go. That you showed initiative, you're still interested, and that you're determined. Because a determined person is going to show up. Now, let me be clear. I don't recommend people to start showing up at employers' things, but it can work. You come in, you show up. I've interviewed. You come in professional, not demanding, because you don't want to give the wrong vibes, and just say, "Hey, I want to meet you. I want you to put a name to a face. I want to let you know I am still in." It shows initiative. It shows that you're determined. It shows that you're focused. And it shows somebody that I want on my team that's not going to just go quietly into the night.
I love it'd be creepy if you just showed up and kept showing up, and it'd be creepy almost. It really would. And that would be a red flag in and of itself as well, too. Just, yeah, I get it. You want to have that consistent, persistent action, but at the end of that, that could be a red flag to the employer that's like, I really don't want this guy, kind of a thing. And
so on that, so I tell people, you be consistently persistent professionally until they say yes or until they say no. Now, if I told you, Terry, you didn't get the job, you should not show up in my company. But if you have not heard from me, and then it's appropriate, I'm just following up. But if I said no, then you move on, because then it's could be harassment. So I tell people to be consistently persistent professionally. So you wouldn't say, hey, I've been here 10 times. That's not professional. Hey, I'm Belinda. I'm just checking in. I just want you to know I am still very interested in professional. Like it's my first time seeing it. Because then it's going to be like, okay, this person really does want this position. They're not rude. They're not. And I think people miss that. People miss that when they're interviewing, that you can't just be like, or send an email. This is my third time asking you. You want to stay professional, like it's your very first time asking. Hey, I know you're busy. I just want you to know I'm still very interested. In the position, if it's still available or if it's still open, that type of thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
once I say no, it is creepy and it is a red flag and it is harassment.
100%. You reminded me of a couple of different things here. So maybe the position that you wanted is not there, but if you really want to be a part of the team, the company, the organization, the culture, because I believe that there's culture within an organization that you're like, man, I want to be a part of that culture. I want to be a part of that team. I want to be a part of that thing. Maybe the position wasn't the right position for you, but maybe there's something else that you're interested in. So let's say, for example, there's multiple positions at a company that you could be a good match for. You might not have everything, all the technical certifications, all the degree, you might not have all this stuff, but from a different perspective, you can learn those things. You can gain those certificates. You can learn on the job, this, that, and the other. So what would be your recommendation for someone that got to know you're not good for this position, but maybe there's other positions that you could adamantly try for and reapply for because you want to be a part of that team and that culture?
And that's exactly what you would say. I didn't get this position. Are there any other positions in this agency that you think, HR person, that I would be a good fit for? I
Mhm.
see that you have these other positions listed. I can do this, this, and this. I don't have certification in this, but I can learn. I'm a fast learner. So you just, exactly what you said, you just turn around and say, I didn't get the position. I really do want to work here. I've heard nothing but great things about your organization, and I want to be a part of it. And I know that I can be an asset to this company. Again, I see that y'all have these other positions listed. Have you started interviewing for them? I mean, because you're building the rapport. The thing is that I've had, and this is the truth, and I'm going to give two examples. I had a young man interview with me, and this is years ago. He's gone on to be executive directors, but he was just got out of college. He had the just enough experience to qualify, and he had the education. And I was interviewing several people, and at the end, he interviewed well, well enough. At the end of the interview, he said, "I know that I may not have as much experience as everybody else, but if you give me a chance," and we looked me in the faces before COVID. If you give me a chance, I promise I won't let you down. And that stuck with me over. And I interviewed other people who were more qualified, but I picked him because I felt he was honest. I felt he was being sincere, and he went on to be a great employee. I'm gonna give another example of persistence. So, in one of the companies that I'm the HR person for, you have to live in the area where you work because it's a lot of driving. So you have to live in the county. And this one lady called me every day, every month for a year until there was an opening in her county. And she would call and say, and leave a message because I didn't always talk to her. She would say, "Hey, I want to say her name was, I'm going to say Susan. Hey, this is Susan. I'm just checking in again to see if there's any openings in Gwinnett County because I'm still very interested." A year when I had an opening in Gwinnett, who was the very first person I thought of? That
Susan.
person. So it just depends on how you present yourself. And she was never rude. It was always very professional, and very sincere, and not like, "I've called for 6 months." Never anything like that. But when an opening came, Susan she got the job.
Mhm.
So those are two examples that I want to
I
share.
love that. And that takes me down a path of a couple of different areas right here. Number one, when you get told a no, or you get told, hey, we're looking at other opportunities or other options or other candidates, or we're looking in a different direction or whatever the case may be. I was talking to an HR specialist one time. And so there's two parts to this. I was talking to an HR specialist and she was like, well, we're choosing a different direction. And I was like, thank you. Thank you for that feedback. And that caught her off guard. She was like, what do you mean? Thank you. Kind of not really like that defensive, but I almost felt like she was being defensive on that. And she was like, no, that's great feedback. She goes, it is? Like, yeah, it's great feedback. Because as a potential candidate, as a potential employee, feedback is important and no is feedback. I
Mm-hmm.
want to know that I don't have floating jobs, floating resumes, floating anything that's going on out there, because if I do follow up and I don't get any feedback, there's still that open loop right there of knowing, okay, are you going to call me? You're not going to call me if I'm following up, not following up. But when I get told no, that already, it doesn't close the loop, but it at least closes the loop on that opportunity where you can pivot or shift into other opportunities, maybe with the same team, the same organization, or a different company, or a different resume that you submitted. So I
Right.
think that, feedback is really important from an HR perspective. But I know as an HR specialist, you don't have time to get a hold of everybody, say, no, 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 no. That bothers me a little bit because I want to know,
Right.
are you as an HR representative obligated to tell people no, we're seeking other opportunities, or if it's just an absolute no, you just ignore and forget them? Because sometimes I feel that way.
So I did actually a video on this last week when I was interviewing. So every HR person is different. For
Mm,
me, I always tell the candidate that when they don't even ask, when I plan to make a decision, and that you will hear from me either way. If
mm,
it's a no, you'll get an email, thank you email. If it's a yes, you'll get the offer letter. But either way, you will hear from me because I know I like closure. I
mm,
like to be able to move on. So that is one thing I practice. Is it things that a lot of HR people do? I mean, everybody does things differently. I think that depending now, I don't respond to every resume I get. And that's different because I
mhm.
get a lot of resumes. But if I interview you, I will respond to that. It's hard to turn around and all the people that sent you a resume to be like, no, 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 no. But if I call you in for an interview, then I will give you the courtesy of letting you know if you got the position or if you didn't.
Yeah.
That's me. It's not required in the HR field.
And I remember one particular HR specialist. I mean, I formed what I thought was a pretty good like relationship with. We was calling each other on the phone. I was commenting on like, her kids in soccer and my kids in soccer and this that. Like we was literally just having I thought was a great conversation, a great kind of relationship. How important is it to kind of establish rapport with an HR specialist, whether, not necessarily from a personal standpoint, but from a professional standpoint to where you kind of keep the HR person, I want to say in your hip pocket, so to speak, but it's like, how important is establishing those relationships?
So are you speaking from the point of view of you work there and the HR person?
No, I looked on a website, found a person, who the HR person was, reached out, made a phone call, say, hey, I'm interested in being a part of your company. I think you guys are doing great things. I've submitted a resume for about 3 or 4 positions, but I just wanted to have a conversation to let you know who I was, who I am, and just build a bridge between myself, you as the HR specialist, and your company. Now, I actually ended up getting an interview with the project manager. Of course, I wasn't selected, but it was one of those things that the person actually thought of me and came back and said, hey, well, we got another thing. Why don't you submit a resume? Hey, we got something else. So the person really kind of kept me in mind whenever there was opportunities. So I think that that wouldn't have happened, even though I got told no a couple of different times. It's one of those things that having that relationship, or at least that positive relationship with an HR specialist, I think that led to those other potential opportunities.
Absolutely. I mean, just like I said, the lady that called every
Mhm.
year, every month for a year, you
Mhm.
know, I remembered her. It is important because no, you may not have gotten this position or you didn't qualify for this position, but if you left a positive standing on the
Mhm.
HR person, I'm going to remember you for the next opening. You're the first person I'm going to call,
Mhm.
and bring in and see if, you're still interested or if there's still a match or whatever. So absolutely, it is important if you're able to establish that.
And how important is networking, with the community, with, businesses in the area? Because I truly believe that your network is your net worth, but I don't think that a lot of people fully understand the idea of networking.
So networking is important if so let me go back to I think of networking as a reference.
Mm,
So you're building up references to speak highly of you and your name in rooms you're not in. So
mm,
you're networking to be able to somebody be like, oh, that'd be a great opportunity for Terry. He's nowhere in this room. I hadn't talked to him in a month, but because I know Terry, we've interacted. I think this will be a great opportunity. So it's kind of like that. The problem with networking and references is that I may be a sucky person. So I'm going to speak great things about Terry, and they may say, any friend of Belinda's is not a friend of mine. So
that's a red flag.
again, Terry Wade, no, I'm not using him. So you have to be mindful of who is speaking your name in rooms.
Mm,
So same thing with the reference. Be mindful who your references are. Even somebody at a job. So you may say Belinda works here. they, because I always ask the person, do you know anybody who works here? Oh yeah, Belinda.
Mhm.
And then I'm thinking to myself, Belinda's horrible. She's on her last leg here. Why would I bring in a friend of Belinda's? So I'm always tell people be mindful of the references, which is same thing as networking. Be mindful of who you network with, because that person may be doing more damage than good for you. But it does help if someone, there are people who can say, Belinda, hire her. And on that person's word alone, you would go. You would be like, come on, because this person has that much standing with me. So it's a win, but it can be a terrible loss too.
And that actually happened to me. So I remember I used the wrong references years ago for something, and I ended up like, oh my goodness, for like a whole entire year. Now I had already had the job, I was already working,
Right.
but because I was trying to progress, I was trying to increase something without going into great detail. I had to submit this paperwork in order to do that with references and this, that, and the other. So I was sitting here thinking like, oh my goodness, I don't really know anybody. I don't have anybody. So I put friends, I put family, I put people that I thought was in my inner circle at the time, and it ended up burning me. It ended up coming back and bite me in the behind, where it was like, man, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Because you never know what somebody else is going to
Right.
say, like in another room, like what you just mentioned in reference right there. Like I had no idea these people were going to say, well, Terry, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And like, oh my goodness, Terry, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh my goodness. So I'm sitting here, I'm not really in defense mode, but I was like in justification mode,
Right.
kind of a thing of like, man, yeah. And I didn't deny none of it. I was like, yes, this happened. Yes, I did that. Oh my goodness, who hasn't done that?
Right.
Kind of a thing. But it ended up like for about 6 months, I was just being interviewed and questioned and ran through the ringer of all these different things. And then ultimately the decision was made for me to go to that next step, that thing that I was. So I actually did get the thing I was trying for, but man, I got ran through the ringer for about 6 months.
Yeah. Because the other thing too is when they said, did you do this or you did that, you wasn't prepared to for that. So you're like,
Mhm.
what? Where did that come from? Who told you that? It was like your
Mhm.
reference.
Yeah.
So absolutely, you have to
Yeah.
be mindful.
References are very important, and you want to make sure that, and I just want to kind of caveat on this as well too. If you do use a reference, you want to make sure that you reached out and let that person know that you use them as a reference, or get
Please.
permission to use them as a reference.
Thank you. That is the follow up to that, because I've had people use me as a reference and don't I let me know that you've applied for a job and that you put me down, because
Yeah.
I don't answer random numbers. So, and I don't want to be caught off guard like, who? I may know you by your nickname and you're calling me about your government name. You need to ask and inform the person, hey, can I use you as a reference? Yes. You remember I worked at such and such from here to here. Because I mean, off the top of your head, you're out shopping and you get called for a reference and you're like, you don't remember all that, especially if you don't know they're going to call. So I'm always, if you're going to use me as a reference, let me know. Let me know the name of the company that's calling, so I'll know to look for numbers I don't recognize, and what a position you're applying for.
I love
That's
that. And I've actually said, I remember being asked one time as a reference, is like, hey, do you know so and so? Yeah. Would you serve with them again or work with them again? Oh, hell no. It was
right.
just like immediately I was like, because the person never let me know. They didn't say, hey, I'm going to use you as a reference. Like, didn't even have the courtesy of reaching out. And once again, it goes back into like, any friend of Belinda's is not a friend of mine, kind of a thing.
Right.
So I was just sitting here like, man, why would this person even remotely think I had their back, kind of a thing? And I just destroyed this person. It was just like, no, I don't know this person. I don't like this person. I would never serve with this person again. Well, don't ever call me. Like, it was just one of those things that it didn't really catch me off guard, but it was one of those things that, I don't even want to use the word thankfully, but at least I remembered the person. I remember like, man, is this person in good standing with me? Are they not in good standing with me? Is it a yes? Is it a no? Or is it a hell yes or a hell no? And I think that once you can kind of differentiate between all of that, you'll be able to be a good reference.
Right.
But at the opposite end of that spectrum, whenever you do extend, and I want to add this one other thing right here, if you do extend yourself as a valuable reference, stand by your word, because a lot of times I think people say, oh, yeah, man, if you need anything, call me. dude, I got your back. And then the moment that you need them and you reach out to them and you need them to have your back, and they either don't have your back, don't have time for your back, whatever the case may be, I think that's a red flag as well, too, because if you're going to use somebody as a reference and then they just don't have your back, man, that's a huge red flag.
Absolutely. I mean, you want to have a couple of not a couple of red flags. You want to have a couple of backups for
Mhm.
references because you never know who else you're going to have to send it to. So, because sometimes references are verbal and sometimes they send you an assessment that you have to fill out. So, and if the person don't check their email or don't respond or their grammar's not that great, you might not want them filling out a reference for you. So, you want to have a couple of people that you know well enough that knows you well enough that will speak highly of you in the situation that you're going in. Because it just depends. If you're going for some social club, then yeah, I need people who be like, Belinda's she likes to have fun, or she this, she that. But somebody, if I'm going for a professional position, I need somebody to be like, Belinda's very professional. She takes her job very. So they may not be the same person. So you want to have a couple of different references in mind, in case you need.
Yeah, I love that. I have a couple more things that I want to talk to you about, and they're really, really important. I truly believe, and it's something that even I've struggled with, within the past. And the number one thing when you fill out the resume, you go through the process, you get past HR, you get to the interview. There's always this question of what is your desired salary? And I struggle with that. It's one of those things like, man, like I know what I'm worth. I'm worth 11 million, with pinky up to $11 million, kind of a thing. But it's like I know what my value is. I know what my worth is, but it's like you find yourself in this little conundrum of like, do I play too low? Do I ask for too little? Do I ask for too much? Where's the balance within desired salary?
The thing about salary, and nobody likes that question. I'm gonna be honest with you. Nobody likes to be asked that because you don't want to oversell yourself, and not oversell yourself, but say so high you're out the range that'll be like, I can't afford Terry. He said he wants 90 and my high is 80. Right. So then I may not say, well, Terry, the position's 80. I know you wanted 90. There's no wiggle room. I may not even ask that. I may just eliminate Terry and go on to the next person who is within my range. On the flip side, my high may be 80 and Terry may say 40. And I'll be like, man, I can get Terry for 40 and have a $40,000 save in my pocket. So it's a match. What I tell people too is before the interview, because you're going to be interviewed, do your research on what is your area, what the area pay is in your area, in your city, with your experience and with your education. Then see if they have somewhere on Glassdoor or something, the salary range posted.
Mhm.
Next, you say, I am interested in this range. And you give a range. Do not land on one number.
Mhm.
Because if you land on one number, then you're stuck there. But if you say anywhere between 75,000 and 90,000, if that's what you tell me, that is the range I'm looking for. I'm paying 80. Okay, I can afford Terry.
Mhm.
So you want to give a range after you've done research because you don't want to give a low range and then you get lowballed the offer, but you want to stay in the range.
Mhm.
And then
I,
you can
I
ask, what is the range for this position? When I looked on, when I looked on Glassdoor, when I looked on the financials, the range said it was 50,000. Is that still the case? Ask.
mhm. I had that conversation with somebody one time because the range was lower than what I was what I wanted, but the position was there. It was one of those things like, man, this is a great company, great position. The range is a little bit low. So I got to that point of asking for like the range, and it was, I don't know if I created an uncomfortable moment or not, but I like told a story kind of a thing. I was like, hey, here's where I'm coming from. This is what I was making. This is what my desired outcome is. This is what I'm trying to do. Do you lay all that on the line, or is that a part of the story to where you can let people know what your desires are? And it's like, this is the reason why I'm asking this. Is that good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever the case would be? I think that when you let people know what you want, they can align a salary and their goals with your goals as well, too. What are your thoughts on that?
So I would not. So if I'm helping someone who's looking for a job, what I tell people is that I try not to talk about money in the first interview because
Mm,
I want to love Terry. I don't
mm,
even know what his range is. I want to love Terry and be wanting to offer Terry a position before we start talking about money. I already want Terry to be my front runner. So in the interviews, when you're selling yourself, you know, selling yourself about what you can do, what you can bring, your experiences, etc. Then the second call or the second interview is when you could talk more about money because I like you enough to have another phone call, to have another meeting with you. So on the first interview, it's kind of because I can weed you out. I don't really know if I'm feeling for Terry, but once you get past that, then you can start talking more about money. So you can say what your range, you can say what your range is or what you're expecting. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to say because I da 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 unless they ask. Your experience, because your resume tells you what you've done. The interview, you talked about what you can do and what you've done. I don't necessarily need you to hear it and say it again because for as an employee, it doesn't matter. This is what I can pay.
mhm.
I've already allotted this amount of time. So whatever long reason you give me why you need to make such and such, I can only pay between, this and this.
Mhm.
And you don't have to justify it unless they say, do you have certificates? Yes, here are my certificates. You have education to show. Yes, this is it. Do you have experience? Did you really make this amount of money in your last job? That's the other thing too, because a lot of people will say they made a certain amount in their last job and they didn't.
Mhm.
They were nowhere near it, but they're just trying to get more. So,
Mhm.
be mindful of what you say, what you've done from your last job if you haven't made that.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. And that leads me to this one right here. And this is the final question before we close down. You've made your way through the whole process, you've given your desired salary, and then the employer wants to run a test. They want to run a test. They want you to come in for 4 hours, complete a task, or do something to make that final decision. That's a two-part question. One, is it legal? Can they do that? It's like I don't know if okay, are you going to pay me for that 4 hours? Are you not going to pay me for that 4 hours? Are you wanting to run me through the gamut to see if I can or cannot complete a task? It's like, man, I'm in a gray area with that because I feel like if you're going to have me come in for 4 hours, you have a code for that. And I know you have a code for that. Are you going to pay me, for that 4 hours? Or you just really want to run me through the ringer? Well, can you really do this? And then we want you to complete a task that either we can't complete, nobody else can complete. We want to see if we give you something to test you to see if you can complete it, whatever the case may be. Man, like that, there's a lot to unpack with that. And I read that one time. I was like, be prepared to come in for 4 hours to complete a task. I was like, why? You're either going to hire me or not hire me. Why should I have to complete a task? What are your thoughts on that?
So, it's similar to a working interview, which is not legal in a lot of states. So
Mhm.
it depends on what state you're in. So
Okay.
the thing about a working interview is to see if you can really do what you say you can do. I'm
Mhm.
always iffy on things like that. I recommend people not do that because it just is a very gray area. Because the question is, am I going to get paid for it? A lot of times people do pay for however many hours. I'm going to pay you this for this many hours to see if you're able to do it. I never recommend a working interview. I do recommend you come in, when you do an interview, maybe we do a tour of the place and then you can talk about how you would do it or what you see different, or I've worked on that machine before, but to actually have you perform that, I do not recommend small businesses to do that. It is a
Yeah, because
slippery slope that you don't, because here's the other thing. What happens if you get hurt?
exactly what I was thinking. You read my mind.
so you're going down rabbit holes that you don't have to go down. Is it legal in every state? No. Some states it is legal. Some state is not. Some employers or small businesses do practice that. I encourage people not to because a lot can happen in 4 hours. A whole lot can happen. You're not officially on the clock. Because you could have, a lot of places you have to pass a background check. You maybe can't pass a background check. And I got you in front of, maybe vulnerable people for showing me you can do something for 4 hours.
Mhm.
You put your company at risk, and it is a risk that I would not take. So I'm always mindful of things like that, which can be a red
100.
flag for you. If you're going looking out for a job and you be like, they want me to come in and do And you can ask other people, have they done that? Because maybe it is the practice that,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that you come in to do. But I mean, it's definitely would be a red flag, at least a yellow flag that's turning orange, that's going straight to red. I mean, it's definitely a flag and not a
Yeah.
green one.
I love that. And there's so much risk that's at stake whenever you do something like that, because you're right. It's like, do you give them a real world task or do you give them a scenario? Do you give them something that could potentially destroy you, your reputation, your company, your team, whatever the case? So once again, that's a gigantic red flag. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, man, do I really want to submit a resume for something that I have to potentially go in and waste 4 hours of my time? Or do you go in for the 4 hours and prove you actually are the right candidate? So man, there's a big gray area right there. You got risk, you got legality, you got what if you can get hurt? What if you destroy something? What if you like completely destroy their business and their name? It's
Right.
like, man, you're at fault, but are there repercussions? Can they sue you? Can they take you to court? I mean, there's a lot.
Right.
That's a big,
That's
big
right.
question right there. It really is. So, Belinda, I've had an absolutely amazing time talking with you here today. Before we go, I want you to share one golden nugget. If you could share something, the most valuable thing from your knowledge, your skills, your experience, your wisdom, what would that one golden nugget be?
I would say that to take mental health seriously. For small businesses, take the mental health of your employees seriously. It is now more than ever. It's in the news now. We hear it all the time. Employees are more than just robots. They're more than just people trying to make you rich. They have lives, they have things going on. You need to make sure that you, as a boss, as a small business, that you're doing the right thing for your employees.
Mhm.
As an employee, as a person looking for a job, take your mental health seriously. Ask the company if they're interested in, mental health. Not necessarily mental health days, but mental health practices. Do they promote that? Do they talk about taking time off? Or do we all work 90 hours a week and afraid to take vacation? So mental health, is it important for the company you're going for? Is it important for yourself?
Mhm.
So that is a nugget that I tell people and small businesses owners, they need to take that serious.
Mhm.
It wasn't taken serious 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It must be taken serious now.
I love that. And that actually spurred a question here as well, too. I know we wanted that to be
Absolutely.
the
We're
final
fine.
thing,
I got all the
but
time you need.
it literally just it literally led me down the path of unlimited PTO, because I think that taking PTO is important. And I truly believe that you must do that for your mental health, not only for yourself, but for the team and the organization as well, too. But then you have companies that say unlimited PTO. I think that's a red flag. I truly believe it, because at one way or another, that unlimited PTO is going to come back to either bite you or the company in the behind, depending on whether it's a contract, whether it's this, whether it's that. I think that you could destroy yourself and the company by taking unlimited PTO. And I'll give you an example. Well, under contract, you said it's going to take this amount of time in order to complete the task. Well, you had employee A over here that took unlimited PTO and they didn't complete it. Or even worse, they completed the task in 2 weeks when the contract was for 2 years. Well, gosh, now we just paid you for 2 years when a person just did something in 2 weeks. What's going on here? Are we overpaying you? Did we, what's the deal with the contract? I think unlimited PTO is a slippery slope and it's a red flag.
So for unlimited PTO, and employees like to hear, oh, we have unlimited PTO. The thing about any PTO, unlimited or limited, is that it has to be approved.
Mm.
So just because I have unlimited PTO at my organization, let's say that I do, you can't just randomly, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna take that. It has to be approved unless you're out sick. So it has to be approved. So you can't just be like take a vacation every month. I'm not gonna approve that for you to be off 10 days every month. I'm not gonna approve that, even though PTO is unlimited. So the thing is you say unlimited PTO because you want a lot of people coming in. You want to get good candidates. And you don't want PTO to necessarily be blocked because some people might need more than 30 hours, however many they get a year, 30 hours or 20 hours or 40 hours a year. So you have that caveat. Well, I do have a little PTO that you can take in if it's unlimited PTO. So I can see where you say that, see, that's a red flag. I can see where you say that, how you feel that way. but PTO has to be approved. So even if whether it's limited or unlimited, it stands on that. If you have a project, if Terry has a project and it's this amount of hours has to be done, I would tell Terry, and he's asking to go on PTO. I would tell Terry, I will approve PTO from this time to this time, but you need to have your work done.
Mm-hmm. I love
Right.
that.
So you need to be able to figure that out on your end.
So before we go here, what current projects are you working on and how can people connect with you the best?
So they could connect with me on my website at rocketemployment.com. Projects that I'm working on. So this year or late last year, I transitioned to help focus small business owners. So small business owners and entrepreneurs who do not have an HR department, who have no idea what they're doing. They're hiring people and then putting them to work and have no idea of all the things in between that need to be done. So that is what I'm working on, educating small business owners, maybe contracting with them to become the HR department to help them streamline. One of the things that I'm doing in those businesses as well is talking about mental health. What things can you do? And I know people have budgets and they can't afford big things, but what things can you do to help your employees with mental health? So those are the projects that I'm working on. Again, working with small businesses and entrepreneurs who don't have an HR department, who want to contract with me on how to better serve their organization, because people are your organization. Everybody, we're not all in robots yet. Human beings are capital. They are what we need to make our business work. And I'm here to help you help support them to make your small business owner, entrepreneur dreams come true. So those are the projects that I'm working on. So you can reach me at info@rocketemployment.net. So that's my email address, or my website, rocketemployment.com. You can always reach me on Instagram, Facebook, all the social media platforms.
I love that. Belinda, thank you so much for taking your time and answering these
Thank you,
great questions
Terry.
today. Absolutely. All right. So thank you for joining us here today. My name is Terry Thompson. This is the Bottom Line Upfront podcast. Thank you to Belinda. Get connected with her over at rocketemployment.com. I'm telling you, if you're looking for a job, you want some tips, tools, techniques, resources on how to write your resume or position yourself to get that next job, either your first job or your next job, get connected with Belinda over at rocketemployment.com, and we'll see you in the next episode.